Jacob and Emily had always imagined this day standing on their own piece of land, a quiet place where dreams could grow in the soil. They had driven 3 hours from the city to see the farm they'd just purchased, lured by its rustic charm and the hope of a fresh start. For 10 years, their lives had been filled with silent prayers and fertility treatments that left their hearts bruised and empty. Maybe this land, with its open skies and quiet hills, could be their peace. Asterisk as their car crunched over the gravel driveway. The place looked exactly as they expected. Faded red barn, aging fence posts, and fields that hadn't seen life in years. They stepped out, hand in hand, hearts full of cautious hope. The realtor waved them over, keys jangling in his hand, sweat on his brow from the rising sun. Asterisk, this here's the main barn, he said, sliding the doors open with a creak. Needs work, but the bones are good. Asterisk, Jacob and Emily followed him inside, expecting old tools or bales of hay. But what greeted them was something far more unexpected, something that stopped them in their tracks. Asterisk. In the dim light filtering through the slats of the wooden walls, 5 children huddled together, in the corner of the barn, dirty, thin, and barefoot. The oldest, a boy maybe 10 years old, stepped in front of the others like a shield, his face hard with suspicion and fear. The youngest, a girl who couldn't be more than 2, clutched a threadbare stuffed bunny. For a few moments no one spoke. Jacob blinkered, unsure of what he was seeing. Emily's hand tightened around his ear. The realtor glanced at them, oddly unfazed. Asterisk, oh, right, he said with a shrug. Kids were left here. Belonged to the last owner, well, his niece's kids or something. He passed a few months back. They've been sticking around. No one's claimed them yet. Asterisk, Emily turned to him slowly, her voice trembling. Are you saying they've been living here, in this barn? Asterisk, he scratched his head. CPS is backed up. You know how it is. Technically, they're still part of the estate. Nothing to worry about. You're the new owners now. Asterisk, Jacob's jaw clenched. You mean we just bought a property with 5 abandoned children in it? Asterisk, they came with the estate, the man said again, like he was talking about an old tractor. Asterisk, Emily took a step toward the children, her eyes meeting the gaze of the oldest boy. His lips pressed into a tight line, but his eyes flickered with something else, something like desperation hiding behind defiance. Asterisk, she crouched slowly, trying not to scare them. Hey, it's okay. I'm Emily, this is Jacob. We're not here to hurt you. Asterisk, no one answered. The silence felt heavier than the dust in the air. Asterisk, back outside, away from little ears, Emily turned to Jacob, her voice barely more than a whisper. We can't leave them here. Asterisk, Jacob rubbed his temples. This isn't what we planned. We were going to build something new. He'll just... us. Asterisk, I know, she said, tears forming. But maybe that's what they need too, a chance to heal. Just us. He looked back at the barn, where 5 sets of eyes still peered out from behind a broken door. They had come to buy land, not lives. Asterisk, but sometimes, life doesn't ask for plans or permission. Sometimes, it just opens a barn door and places 5 fragile souls in your path and waits to see what you'll do next. Asterisk, and in that moment, Jacob reached for Emily's hand again, but this time with something more than uncertainty. This time it was a quiet kind of promise. Asterisk, the motel room was small and plain, with faded floral curtains and a humming air conditioner that couldn't quite cut through the weight in the air. Outside, the sky had turned dark, and the quiet country road lay still under a blanket of stars. But inside, the silence between Jacob and Emily was louder than any storm. Asterisk, Emily stood by the window, arms wrapped tightly around herself, watching the night as if it could give her answers. Her reflection in the glass looked older, wearier than she remembered. A tear traced a line down her cheek, then another. She didn't wipe them away. Asterisk, Jacob sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped together, elbows on his knees. He had been trying to find the words, but none of them seemed right. The image of the children wouldn't leave his mind. How small they looked in that barn. How still, like they had learned long ago that the world didn't listen. Asterisk, he finally stood and walked over to her. Gently, he placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't move. Asterisk, we tried for 10 years. Emily, he said softly. Doctors, treatments, prayers, and nothing, not even a flicker of hope. He paused, voice cracking. And now 5 kids, alone, abandoned like scraps no one wanted to claim. Asterisk, Emily closed her eyes, more tears slipping down. They didn't even flinch when we walked in, she whispered. What kind of life teaches children not to react to strangers, not to cry? Asterisk, Jacob's fingers tightened slightly on her shoulder. A life where they've learned not to expect kindness. Asterisk. For a long time, they stood there, wrapped in their own ache. It wasn't just about the kids, it was about all the years of loss each month that came and went like a cruel reminder. Every baby shower they didn't attend, every empty nursery catalogue they put away in a drawer. Asterisk. Emily finally turned to face him, her face pale and tear-streaked. Her eyes met his tired, searching, but filled with something else too, a fragile hope. Asterisk. Maybe, she said slowly, voice trembling, maybe this is what we were meant for, not to make children, but to find them. Asterisk. Jacob stared at her, stunned by the weight of her words. He thought back to the smallest one, her little arms wrapped around a tattered stuffed bunny like it was the only thing that had never left. He remembered the oldest boy, trying to look strong even though he was clearly just a child himself. Asterisk. Emily took Jacob's hand in hers. We prayed for a family. Maybe this is how the answer came, not how we expected, but maybe exactly how we needed. Asterisk. The words settled between them, not loud or grand, but deeply real. In that quiet, unfamiliar motel room, something shifted. Their pain didn't disappear, never would, but it began to soften, reshaped by a new kind of purpose. Asterisk. Jacob nodded slowly, pulling her into his arms. They held each other not as two people broken by years of disappointment, but as two souls who had been given a second chance, one they never saw coming. Asterisk. And outside, beyond the curtains, the stars kept watch, silent and bright. Asterisk. The farmhouse kitchen still smelled of dust and old wood. No matter how many times Emily scrubbed the counters or opened the windows, morning light filtered through the floral curtains, casting soft shadows on the floor. The table was set with care, 6 plates, 6 glasses, scrambled eggs, toast, and warm oatmeal. It was quiet, painfully quiet. Asterisk. Emily stood by the stove, trying to smile as the children shuffled in one by one, each at their own pace. The smallest girl, barely 3, clung to the leg of the older boy, her thumb tucked in her mouth. The eldest, Noah, stood just inside the doorway, arms crossed, eyes cold and distant. He didn't say a word. The others sat stiffly, glancing around like animals expecting the trap to snap shut. Asterisk. Good morning, Emily said gently, placing a small plate in front of the youngest. I made eggs and oatmeal. There's jam for the toast. Asterisk. No response. The youngest wouldn't meet her eyes. Another child, a girl of maybe 7, stared at the food like it was a mirage. She slowly reached for a slice of toast, but then, with quick, practiced hands, stuffed it into her hoodie pocket. Asterisk. Emily's heart broke, but she didn't react. She just knelt beside the girl and offered a napkin. If you'd rather save it for later, that's okay. Asterisk. The girl froze, eyes wide in panic, expecting to be yelled at or scolded, but the kindness in Emily's voice didn't change. The girl gave a tiny, confused nod. Asterisk. Noah remained standing. We don't need your food, he said flatly. We're fine on our own. Asterisk. Jacob, standing by the sink, exchanged a glance with Emily but said nothing. They had agreed no pushing, no force. These children had lived through something far worse than silence. Asterisk. The rest of breakfast passed in near total quiet, broken only by the scrape of spoons and the occasional cough. When it was over, the children scattered like leaves in the wind. The little one followed the others, still not having touched her food. Asterisk. That evening, the kitchen was warmer. Emily lit a small candle and set out dinner again. This time it was pasta and soft bread rolls. The children came in slowly, warily, as they had that morning. Asterisk. Emily didn't sit. She stood at the head of the table, her voice low but steady. Asterisk. You don't have to like us, she said, her gaze moving from one little face to the next. You don't even have to trust us right now. The oldest boy looked away, jaw clenched. But I want you to know something, Emily continued. You'll never be hungry again, not as long as we're here. Asterisk. There was silence, long, heavy, and uncertain. No one spoke, but for the first time, no one ran either. Asterisk. The 7-year-old slowly reached for a roll and didn't hide it. The little girl climbed onto a chair by herself and picked up a spoon. Even Noah, standing in the doorway, lingered a moment longer, before walking away without a word. Asterisk. It wasn't trust yet, not even close, but it was a beginning. And beginnings, Emily knew, were where healing always started. The rain came suddenly that afternoon, thick, heavy drops that turned the dirt backyard into puddles and the old wooden fence into a line of wet shadows. Emily was in the kitchen, watching through the window as the children played, laughing, for the first time in weeks. The middle child, a spirited girl named Lily, was chasing a rubber ball across the uneven ground. She slipped before anyone could stop her. The fall wasn't dramatic, just a tumble onto her knees, but the silence that followed was she sat there frozen, mud on her hands, a bright red scrape forming on her skin. Her lip trembled. Then, without warning, she let out a cry, unguarded and full of pain she hadn't dared express before. Jacob was already outside, sprinting through the rain, calling her name. He knelt beside her, expecting her to flinch or pull away, like she had every time he tried to offer comfort before. But this time was different. This time, Lily threw her arms around his neck and sobbed into his shirt. She shook with tears, soaking wet, her scraped knee forgotten in the tide of emotion. Jacob wrapped his arms around her tightly, shielding her from the rain with his body, gently rocking her like she was made of glass. From the kitchen window, Emily covered her mouth, heart aching and full all at once. One by one, the other children stepped outside. First the little one, dragging her bunny, then the older girl, then the boy who'd been the most distant. Even Noah appeared, standing stiffly under the porch roof, watching Jacob hold Lily like a real father would. No one spoke, no one moved, but something had shifted, so quietly and suddenly that it almost felt like the rain had washed the weight away. Jacob looked up, brushing wet hair from Lily's face. "It's okay now," he whispered. "You don't have to be strong or..." The time, later that evening, when the storm had passed and everyone sat around the fireplace in dry clothes, Lily leaned her head against Jacob's arm and whispered, "Thanks, Papa Jake." He froze, stunned, but then smiled, his eyes shining with disbelief. Emily, sitting on the couch with the youngest in her lap, felt a tug at her sleeve. The little girl looked up shyly. "Mama, Emily," she said softly, then buried her face against her chest. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She looked at Jacob, and he nodded, his smile widening. Noah didn't say it out loud not yet, but that night, he didn't sleep in the barn loft. He chose the couch by the fire, wrapped in a blanket Emily had set out for him. They had been strangers, then caretakers. Now, for the first time, they were being called something more: family. 6 months later, the old farmhouse looked nothing like the place they'd first stepped into. The paint was fresh, the fields were green, and the barn, once a symbol of abandonment, had been transformed into a colorful playroom bursting with laughter and light. Its walls were now covered with handprints in bright paint, crayon drawings, and shelves lined with books and toys. The shadows that once haunted the corners had been replaced with joy. It was golden hour, that soft, glowing time of day when everything felt touched by magic. On the front porch, Emily sat on the swing, her arm wrapped gently around the youngest girl curled up beside her. A picture book lay open in Emily's lap, the little one pointing at a rabbit on the page and giggling softly. Just beyond the porch, Jacob knelt in the grass with Noah and the other 2 older kids. They were working together to mend a piece of the fence. Noah held the post steady while Jacob guided him through the steps, his voice patient and encouraging. The boy, once guarded and distant, now nodded with confidence, his eyes focused and bright. The photographer friend from town was supposed to be there to take a family photo, but she had paused her work, quietly watching through her lens. There was something sacred in the scene, something too genuine to pose. She lifted her camera and snapped a candid shot capturing not 5 abandoned children, but 5 souls who had finally found home. Emily looked up just as the shutter clicked and met Jacob's eyes. They shared a quiet smile, one born from everything they had lived through, everything they had rebuilt together. No words were needed. The laughter of their children was enough. Later, as the sun dipped below the hills and painted the sky in soft orange and pink, the family sat on the porch steps with mugs of cocoa, warm blankets wrapped around their shoulders. The photographer showed them the photo on the camera's screen. All 6 of them together, no tension, no fear, just belonging. Emily looked at it for a long time, her eyes misting over. Then she gently kissed the top of the youngest child's head and said quietly, "We didn't give them life, but they gave ours a purpose." And as the stars began to twinkle overhead, their hearts once so hollow and aching felt whole.